Hi, my name's Mary Buchanan Sellers, and I am the author of Cerebral Weather, which came out in May. I am so excited to be here and very, very nervous. And I haven't publicly, and I'm going to consider this publicly read since 2017 when I was in graduate school at LSU. A little about me. I live in Jackson, Mississippi. I got my MFA in fiction from LSU. I lived in Seattle for a bit, but then came back down to the South. I worked as a teacher for about 9 years before transitioning to a role as an archivist. And I consider myself an archivist in training right now. But yeah, I'm a Mississippi girl who's been a transplant a couple of times. Mental health plays a huge role in my life. Um, I have a family member who has struggled with it extensively, and I have also struggled with it. I am diagnosed bipolar 2, and I also struggle with OCD. So mental health is prevalent in my book, which looks like this. It's a little bent. So I wanted to read you one, maybe two things. The first is called The Debt of the Head to the Heart. And I guess we'll get going. I hope I don't make a mistake. Driving through Pennsylvania with streets bearing your middle name like exposed thumbs has a bracing effect on you. Predestined, perhaps, despite the kinks of embarrassment in thinking so. It's a relative time warp exiting south for north. Let me start over. It's a relative time warp exiting south for north. Land, so much of it, broad expanses of story and farmhouse against cutback wild. History laced in the narrow roads and post-wintered skies, taking a 200-year nap against the unfamiliar antonym of a past paced and chronicles, remotely, self-interestedly replete in the way all great and lasting lands seem to outsiders. You're a southerner in a strange kingdom where the roads bend so acutely storybook it's a matter of principle not to feel jealous about it. You console yourself with Audible, a 15-hour autobiography on a British noblewoman famous for her politics, letters, and debt, for what modern-day medicine would likely diagnose as attention deficit disorder. High verbal, tripping, scattery treaties to friends and lovers, an obvious mark of a fine china mind with its charming collection of cracks. The cracks were why they loved her, how best she's seen through. Breakdowns throughout, falls from grace gleaned from bad behavior. Her correspondences reading like a series of pleas and playdates by an overgrown, precocious child bent on self-destruction through marvelous habits. The abutment of vast acreage and intricacies of cramped aristocracy coincide in a peaceful embrace of older and older still. You mark time by chapter in the tree light and road sign and white pavement as you slip so thoroughly through the travel's absences and far enough away from the event to recognize it as the last of its kind. Home, though 2 days away, irons its chains and beckons with its apron strings. You'd said goodbye before the gift, mere pretense for the action. One parting item in the form of a porcelain monkey studying the human skull in miniature. Origins of the professor for the professor. A debt paid in this century toward another, and in the sealed, liqueured promise of cessation. You'll remember the look on his face, fitfully, always. Yeah, so I messed up, but we'll continue. So the next part or the next section I wanted to read was the ending of a short story. It's called Because We Are Not to Be Drunk with Wine, but Be Filled with the Spirit. It's taken after a Bible verse. It's a little bit about magic, a lot about psychology, um, and a little bit about ghosts too. So I'll start near towards the end. Rabbi Yochanan said, after the destruction of the Holy Temple, the power of prophecy was taken from the prophets and given to the mentally ill and children. She could lose herself on the internet, feel seamless, indefinite, like another better version of herself, rebirth, each time she pressed the pads of her fingers against the screen. Not all prophecy is the same, for the prophecy of the prophets was endowed by God, blessed be he, or one of his angels, whereas the prophecy of the mentally ill in children is endowed by a demon. Pixels for stars, its quiet buzz of immortality trapped just above her tapping, the internet as creature, or perhaps a genus above animal altogether. One article, self-convinced that the internet was made of demons, suggested theories on ways they communicated with humanity through tech. Rabbi Yochanan may have been the first to see the overlap of mental illness and the kinds of things once said by prophets of the Bible. But today, psychiatrists and others involved in the care of the mentally ill have noted this overlap too. And I want to stop there. So this was sort of a mashup of texts that I pulled as well as my own, I guess, the narration of the story throughout. So the text that I pulled is in italics, juxtaposed to my own writing. So it's basically a young woman sitting down researching something her psychiatrist gave her to read, reading the text, and then thinking. So if that was a little confusing. Let's keep going. Others claimed magic through, I'm sorry, others claimed magic ran through the algorithm's very veins, had a touch of God perhaps, in the way it knew and guided, shepherding us en masse under bluey prismatic grids for skies, seas of servers, data as alias, blood type .tiff. She looked at her watch and the hour hand broke in two, lay crumpled on the bottom right corner in little digital heaps of line. Looking up, she called out to Oliver, the cat, to the unknown variable that cracked its teeth on her life, blown a fuck-all raspberry against his throat. She called until her own throat felt gummed up, called until she cried. Eventually, she made herself some tea and turned on the news to her favorite local station. The weather girl was cute, said things like shucks in offhand husky manners. She waited until the weather report came, waited past the 8-bit sun and cloud iconography and two lousy car commercials, waited until the radar lit up the screen and the cute weather girl ran through her choreography and said with psychic emphasis in her tone how windy it'd be tonight. Later up close in the mirror, she found a single shard of glitter, anaconda green in one direction, a witchy cauldron purple hue in another. Her skin was erupting party supply debris like other people's powdered pimples. On the podcast she was listening to, the host gossiped to her guest about Natalie Portman's intimate dinner parties, Taco Tuesdays, large affairs, guests tangled in one another's celebrity, sticky with their commingled glimmer, fast flash of teeth and skin and celebrated thigh, how Natalie had multiple max-sized diptyque candles going on every surface in the apartment, rooms for thousands of dollars of light. When the rain and wind came, her electricity was temporarily knocked out. The podcast host's voice grated against the slippery edges of weather. She fumbled her way along the hallway to the kitchen, knocked around until she found the drawer with candles. Lit 3, evenly spaced pillars on linoleum counter. The flames licked strong, and she took one to the sliding glass door and looked out at the uneven night. Normal wind, nothing tangible or holy about this kind. She watched the leaves on the patio get picked up, momentarily illuminated by the one outside light's oily rigor. She was drinking too much. She had grown used to having a buried tent to her teeth, the clumsiness, the butterfingers inherent of a drunk. She thought about how it had started, the easiest way to pave a thorough enough line through the pain she'd renamed static. Speaking of one's pain felt trite. Bringing a glass to her lips felt like a simple, safe enough action to do. It maintained her silence while further shutting her up. When she was heavy with wine, there was a weighted sense to the world. She thought about the Bible again, how the only story she remembered in full was the one about Christ's anger, how he drank and stormed the temple. She imagined the breaking scene against firelight and metal, with the dust of the road dragged in, the onlooker's shoulders framed by dogmatic night. Then Christ, finished, wet with mixtures of sweat and temper and wine, standing next to the carnage, full with the knowledge of sin. And one more short one. This one's not so much about mental health, but it's an ode to my cat and my favorite Greek goddess who, if you research her hard enough, has a lot to do with mental health. I consider her adjacent to it. Her name's Hecate, and this is called the Triple Goddess. Oh, cat, staring into the toilet bowl, looking for Hecate. How you nod your nose at those still waters of intestinal aftermath. You wait for a goddess to appear against porcelain, confuse your owner's spiritual stain for fun. Let's come away for a while and light a candle instead. Watch the rhythm of sky with me and wait for the tripling effect. I couldn't have done this without my cat Blue, who is over there in the corner somewhere. I think he's camera shy. But thank you again for listening to me, and I'm sorry for messing up. Um, again, this is what it looks like. Um, I owe artist Nick Horvath. He is from New Jersey. I owe him the cover. Um, Incredibly talented person. I owe Red everything. He made my dream come true and was patient with his guidance and is one of the most brilliant publishers out there today. Um, Thank you so much again, and I hope you'll have a good night.